Today is April 8th, 2018. My name is Alexandria Dominguez, and I'm interviewing Henry Santos for the Voces Oral History Project at the University of Texas at Austin. We're in Hondo, Texas. Again, thank you, Mr. Santos, for allowing us to interview today. As we said earlier, if there's anything you don't wish to talk about, we respect your wishes. If there are things you want to talk about, just please let us know. We may stop the recording if you need to get a drink of water or use the facilities, just let us know. Today we're going to talk about your life in general and more specifically your activism here in Medina County and politics of Medina County. So I guess we can take it back a little further than your activism. Can you tell me when and where were you born?
I was born here in Hondo, Medina County, in 1943, February the 13th, to be exact.
Mm-hmm. So what was growing up in Hondo like?
Oh, well, I lived here about 6 years. I was 6 years old when we moved out to the country. And then I made the rest of my life there, living out in the country.
How was that different from living here in town?
Oh, it was a whole lot different and better for me, because I enjoy out in the country.
Can you talk about your family? I know you have a lot of siblings, so you have a pretty big family. Can you just talk about them and how it was like growing up with them?
Oh, it was real special, real nice, because at that time we didn't have too many places to go out, movies and stuff, being out in the country. So we stayed at the ranch and played around, go fishing, go hunting, horseback riding or whatever we had. That was our enjoyment we had. So we enjoyed all of that.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of your family's ranch? Did your parents inherit it from somewhere, or how did that come to be?
What was that again?
Your family's ranch?
What?
How did that come to be? What's the history
my
behind
daddy
that?
bought that ranch back in the early 40s. And then we finally moved out there, but I believe it was in 1949 when we moved to the ranch.
What kind of impact did growing up with so many siblings have on you?
Oh, not much at all, because we got along good and enjoyed it.
What did you think you were going to be doing when you were a kid? What kind of dreams did you have?
Now, you mean?
As a kid growing up.
Oh, well, we had a lot of, things we did at the ranch, from young, like I said, go fishing, hunting, and horseback riding, all of that we enjoyed, being out in the country.
So that was what you wanted to do?
Yes.
What options were available to you, though? Did you have the option to stay at the ranch, or was there other job opportunities outside of ranching?
Not really, until I grew up, and I got my first job. Then, I had to kind of leave the ranch back behind.
So can you tell me more about your first job? Do you remember how old you were, what kind of setting that was?
Well, way back when I was 13, I helped around, the neighbors do a little work at the ranch, and so I started off pretty early on my age working, and I grew working all my life.
You mentioned in the pre-interview form that you worked for Coca-Cola as a delivery driver.
Yes.
Can you tell me how you got that job?
Well, I got it after I got married. I needed a job. That wasn't my favorite job, being raised out of the country, but I had to have some kind of job to make money. So that's when I took that job. I ran the truck for about a year and a half, and then from there I worked a little tractor company here in Hondo for just a short time, and then I went in with the Texas Highway Department, and I worked there 10 years.
And going back just to your family, were you aware of any kind of dreams that your parents would have had? Is there any sort of dream job that maybe your father or your mother wanted to achieve?
Not really. My father was the type that as long as we had a job, that's what he wanted. He didn't want us laying around the house.
Did you have any kind of role models growing up?
Not really.
So mostly in your family, were they ranch workers? Did they stay on the ranch most of the time?
Most of the time
there?
we stayed at the ranch and did the work there for my dad.
Do you remember any Hispanic community members in Hondo while you were growing up?
And we was more close since I went to school and graduated in Tijenis. And so we was more close to that community and a little town of Yancey, which was close to our ranch. And so Hondo, I had most of my kinfolks in Hondo, but most of the where we hung around, you know, was in Tijenis or Yancey.
Did you encounter any Hispanic community leaders there in Tijenis?
Any what?
Hispanic community leaders?
No.
No. What level of voter or political activism did you see in Tijenis?
Well, Tijenis is a pretty small town compared to Hondo. So now most of the people in my precinct that I ran as commissioner, most of the vote is in Hondo, the majority. Tijenis don't have that many compared to Hondo.
How much did your parents or family talk about voting and politics? Were they ever really involved in that?
Not real strong at it, but they did go out and vote.
Can you talk about your school experience? I know you graduated from Tijenis High School. What was that like for you? Was there a certain majority race or anything like that?
No, since Tijenis, it was a small school. I'm pretty sure when my graduation class was about only 15 in the class.
Oh, wow.
It was a small.
Very small.
Yeah, compared to other schools.
Did you have a favorite teacher there?
A what?
A favorite teacher?
Well, most of them were real good to me as long as I stayed out of trouble.
Were any teachers there Mexican American or were they mostly Anglos?
Mostly Anglos.
From you remember, did that ever present a problem in reaching Hispanic students?
No, we had a real good, while I was in school, we had a good superintendent that he kept everything pretty straight, pretty equal.
And you noted that your parents did not receive any formal education. Did they try to educate themselves elsewhere, or did they just stay?
Well, my daddy learned, you know, he was born, like I said, in Mexico, and when he came to the United States, he was only 5 years old, and he never went to school, but he learned all of that on his own. He learned English and could do mathematics, kind of a little different than what we did in school, but he could still do it. He could still come out with figures, and but he could speak English real good. My mother didn't. She never did try to learn English much, and but my daddy did.
Do you know why that is? Why your mother didn't learn? Was that she just too much?
I guess being that she was at home most of the time, raising the family, she never got out much, to learn it.
Can you recall what school was like for your children? Did they go to school here in Hondo?
No, mine?
Yes,
No,
your
they
children.
went to Dejenes.
Dejenes.
They all graduated in Dejenes.
How was that experience like for them, as far as you know?
I believe it was good for them. Nowadays it kind of changed. They got a little more problem with young kids, being that their behavior is not as good as it was when mine, and even when I was in school, it was different. Everybody behaved a whole lot better.
Do you know if there were any Mexican American teachers at your children's school when they were there?
No, I don't think they were.
Why do you think that is?
There's probably around that area. There probably haven't been any that you take like my daughter. She's been teacher for about 20 years or better, but she teaches here in Hondo. And but the Hennies, they might have some what they call what's the word for it? That help the teachers, teachers aid that are Hispanics in the Hennies, but real teachers, I don't think there's any as far as I know. Now my daughter-in-law, she's a Anglo, and she's a principal in the Hennies, but she's not a Hispanic.
So just going back to differences from all of the different towns in Medina County, how was Dejenes different from Natalia, from Divine, or from Hondo? Was there a really big distinction, or was it all kind of melded together?
Well, no, Dejenes, it was kind of small compared to Divine to Hondo. Now it was a little closer to the size of Natalia, but the only activities they had was when they used to play years back. Used to play football or baseball. That those two schools got together, but other than that, like the other schools, they're a whole lot bigger schools, so they don't play any sports.
Were there any public rallies in your town that you remember?
No, I don't remember of any.
What was the state of voter mobilization in Dejenes? Was there a large population of people really eager to vote, or was it something just low-key?
I guess there were, but it wasn't enough group, to really make difference.
Why do you think that is?
The Indians is kind of, people are kind of different than others. They kind of don't pull together a lot like other towns do.
If your family was eligible to vote, did they?
Yes.
Why did they think it was important to vote, as far as you know?
Well, so that way they have a voice on who was elected.
How divided was Dejenes in political party affiliations, if you can recall?
On the
Political parties, like Democrats, Republicans, was it 50-50?
I would say they were probably close to half and half.
Okay. As a Mexican American, do you feel like your voice was being heard before you decided to run for office as county commissioner?
As a Mexican American?
Yes.
Yeah. I do.
Why do you think that your voice was heard? Was there any prominent people in your community that you resonated with?
I had, the time I was a commissioner, I had a lot of Anglo people backing me up, you know, which it made me feel good that I had both, you know, Latin Americans and Anglo they supported me, and not like other candidates. Sometimes they do it different where they split up a lot. But I had a lot of support from different sides of it.
Do you think there was a racial divide between Democrats and Republicans in D'Hanis?
Not, I don't think it was say that, but they just didn't come together that good.
Why do you think there had not been more political engagement of Mexican Americans in Medina County?
In the whole county?
Yes.
Well, they were not at first, but now it's more strong on the Mexican Americans, you know, on political activities.
Why do you think initially it wasn't?
Well, the people wasn't probably, I would say, educated as much as they are now, you know, years back.
How aware were you of what was going on politically in Crystal City and San Antonio at the time?
Well, just from what I heard,
Yeah.
Crystal City, I know there was a lot of razonida and all that, so that was, and there was some here in Hondo, and they never got to, you know, get elected as easy as other people did, because of trying to just pull to get on their own, you know, they didn't mix. In politics, you can't do that. You know, I was equal to everybody. I didn't take sides.
And just sort of shifting to your political involvement, to what degree were you politically involved before you wanted to run for commissioner? To what degree? How involved were you before you ran for commissioner?
I wasn't much involved. There was people that wanted me to run, and I did run in 1976, and I lost by 62 votes. And then they changed the precinct lines to where they got a bunch of Hondo people in, and then the Hondo people wanted me to run since I ran before. So then that's when I ran in 81, and I won by 82 votes, and then in 84. The same opponent ran back again, and I beat him by 711 votes.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of proved that I was doing a better job, I guess.
What changes were you hoping to accomplish by getting involved in politics?
Well, trying to do the best job I could for the, especially my precinct, but it was, you know, it was a lot of decisions that I had to make for the whole county, not only mine. But I tried to do the best I could.
Who were your influences, if any, when it comes to your activism?
To
your activism, your political engagement. Is there anyone that you looked up to while you were politically involved?
Not really.
Mm. What drove you to run for county commissioner?
Huh?
What drove you to run?
Well, the people that wanted me to run, you know, they truly, I didn't like politics that much, you know. But after I was there that many years, I was able to retire, make a retirement out of it, and which was good.
Why do you say that you didn't like politics?
I wasn't the type that would like to go out and, you know, talk to people and have rallies and all that. I was more maybe because I was raised out in the country. I was quieter, you know. It might have been different if I was raised in town, but since I was raised out there, I was kind of bashful, you know.
So you didn't have any sort of gatherings for your campaign?
No. I did it on myself, you know, go out and talk to people.
Were there any specific areas that you would target in the county? like maybe businesses or types of people that you wanted to reach out to?
To talk to, mainly Hondo was, in the Hennies, it was very little people compared to Hondo, and then I knew more. Of course, there was some that they didn't even vote for me, and there was Mexican Americans, because there was, I don't know, I couldn't figure that out. But since I went to school there, I wasn't treated right. The first time I ran, I lost because of that.
So you're saying there was this sort of people were upset that the vote was split?
It was right. The first time when I lost, the vote was split, and the reason was because they thought it was in a runoff between me and another candidate, and they thought that I split their candidate's vote, for they didn't win, so they kind of voted against me just to pay me back, I guess.
Were you aware of the school walkouts that took place here in Hondo in '74?
No, not. A walkout, you mean?
School walkouts. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that.
So, is the situation for Mexican American students better presently? How so, or what has it remained the same since you've been here in Johannes and Medina County your entire life?
You mean for them to?
For Mexican American students, just in general, how their school experience is, if it's better or worse?
I'd say it's better. It's been a lot of changes compared to years ago in the schools.
So just going back to your campaigns real quick, how did you raise money for your campaigns? What types of methods did you use?
I did it most on my own. There was some good friends that, donated some money for me. And, helped me out a little bit. Not a lot, but enough, because I was the type, I just couldn't afford to spend a bunch of money on politics. And so I did the best I could.
At this time of your first campaign, were you already married?
Yes.
What was your wife's role in your campaign?
Not much. Since she was just a housewife, she didn't get involved.
How did your family view your political participation? Did they support you, or did they participate in your campaigns?
Yeah, the first time when I ran, my daddy was still alive in '76, but then he passed away in '77, so he wasn't here anymore when I won in '81, but he would have probably been real proud of me. And my mother was. She was still living.
What kinds of people were giving you their support? Was there a certain racial group that would support you over another, or was it just really mixed?
It was probably mixed, I would say.
Were there people you knew you couldn't or shouldn't ask to support you in your campaign?
People that I wouldn't
ask for your support?
There was people here in Honda that I didn't really, it wasn't wrong with La Raza Unida, and I didn't want to get involved with them. I wanted to do it just straight on my own,
Why is that?
Because a lot of these people, and that's probably all over, of course, the city and all that the Raza Unida was announcing more on their politic part of it, about helping just the raza. I mean, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be equal, everybody. Naturally, if you're Hispanic, you're gonna lean a little more for Hispanics, but still you can't do it openly. You have to do it, pretty equal to everybody.
What was the cost to you of your campaigns, disregarding monetary value? Were there, long nights, hard campaigning? How was that experience like for you?
No, not. I did the best, doing my regular working hours, talk to people and all that. And there was times where I didn't do much campaign. Well, out of 6 terms, I only had 2 opponents. You see, the rest, I won automatically. Nobody signed up, so that made it easy.
Tell me about the people involved with your campaign. I know you said you mostly did it yourself and you would just individually talk to people, but were there any other people helping you along the way?
They helped me during the voting day. I had some friends that helped me take people out to vote, things like that. Friends of mine. But just during the election day.
I know we talked about this a bit earlier. I understand that there was some backlash from running against John Tondre in '76.
Yes.
How did you confront this backlash?
Well, I don't know much about it, but I ran in '76. That's when I was still working with the state, with the highway department, and I wanted out of there. I was unhappy, and the only way I could run for office was I had to quit the state job to run for public office. So I did that for a reason to get out, and I didn't. That was in '76, and I didn't have that much against Tondre, but I ran against it because he was the one that was there, and that's when I got beat by 62 votes. And then back in '81, that's when they changed a bunch of Hondo people in it, and I knew most of my kinfolk was in Hondo, so that's why I ran again. And I had to really think it over. We had opened a business here in town, me, my brother, and my brother-in-law, so I was comfortable for what we had going. But then so many people was pushing me to run, and that's when I decided to run again in '81. But I really wasn't real crazy about running for office. But then after I got in there, then I kept on going and winning and didn't have opponents and all that. So I was there 23 and a half years, enough to make a retirement out of it.
Can you talk about your main goals as commissioner? Was there a certain platform that you decided to run on?
Do right now? Well, I ranch now. I do ranching at home, and so I run cattle and some sheep and stuff like that, animal, and I enjoy it because that's what I've done all my life, living out in the country, and that's what my daddy used to do. He raised all of us by ranching.
During your time as commissioner, was there a accomplishment that you achieved that just stood out to you? Is there a goal that you met during your time as commissioner?
Like a different thing to do, or
Yes.
no?
Anything you did.
Not really. I was mostly. See, I couldn't have nothing to do with our business, being that I was elected official. So, I made my living out of being a commissioner, and that was it. And I never thought, I still did ranching on the side, but that was about it.
What is the biggest thing being commissioner taught you?
Well, I would say talk to the people, to get along with the people. And sometimes there's one thing you can't ever please the public. There's always somebody who's gonna be against you for some reason or another. But you try to do the best you can, and that's it.
After you lost in '76, What did you do differently in the next election?
I just talked to more people, especially in Hondo, because that's when the new lines changed, and I talked to most of the people in Hondo. But after I won in '81, then in '84 it made it a whole lot easier, because then the people knew that I was doing a good job, and that's when I won by 711 votes, and I ended up winning in every box in the county, in my precinct. So that made me feel good.
Why did you think it was important to run again, despite your loss in '76?
Well, not the people kind of pushed me to run. I was comfortable where I was in my business, but of course the business we had, it was a whole lot harder work than being commissioner, because I didn't do nothing real heavy, heavy work.
Can you talk about your business that you started with your brother? What was that, and if you remember when it came to be?
We started that business in '78, and and I was there just in '81. I won, and I didn't get to work much there. I left my interest there, my partnership, till I knew that I was going to retire, and then I sold my partnership. I didn't want to sell it, because in case something would happen to me, I would go back to the tie shop. It was a tie shop, so I didn't want to sell my interest for that reason. And then when I decided I was going to retire, then I sold my partnership to them, and I got out of it completely.
Are you aware, I'm assuming you're aware about the MALDEF suit over redistricting. How did that suit affect you, other than delaying the 1980 election? Because that's what happened, correct?
In '81, yeah. Well, in '80, in '81 is when they had it. It was actually a special election when I won. But the only thing I didn't see, kind of right, was that they wanted one precinct to have over the majority of the vote. But they wanted more than 50%. They wanted my precinct, which I was the one, precinct 3, they wanted to be 65%. And instead of 51 or 2% or 55, they wanted to be more than half. And I didn't think that was right in a way, but sometimes, the people don't vote as much, the Hispanic people don't vote as hard as the Anglo people when they want to elect somebody. A lot of them was, I'm not going to vote this time, Let somebody else decide. And that's not right, But that's why, they put it up at a high. Now it's getting to the point the percentage is dropping on precinct 3, because there's no more Hispanic people to put in. In '81, that's when they took Hondo, and there was a lot of Hispanic in Hondo compared to Dehenis, being a little town. And that's when they put in Hondo. But then they start every, 5 years, they kind of start changing it, and it was dropping, so they're trying to get a little more people here. But there's areas where there might be, 50 Hispanics, where there's 200 Anglos, and it's hard to pick those little few out, And they're making the lines so crooked now on the precinct lines that it's hard to catch up with them, because I'm trying to get the people in, the Hispanics. And it probably get to the point where then, precinct 3 was the easiest precinct to get the over the 50%, and it's been so far, but it's losing percentage because of that.
What was your specific involvement in the redistricting plans after you were elected in '81? I know there was a few proposals that had to be reviewed.
Well, I was involved with redistricting doing the lines and all that, me and another commissioner, uh, they had us involved in it to try to get the especially the people to Hispanic people to go in that precinct. You know, we're trying to pick out, and they put me in there, being I was Hispanic, that I knew maybe people that we could switch in precinct 3, and so I was involved, and it was hard because we had to do it manually. Now toward the end, and I believe it was in the one before I retired, it was all computerized. It was easy. You say, well, how many people in this area here? And they put in the computer, they tell you so many Hispanics, so many Anglos,
Right.
and real easy. But we had to do all that manually. It was a hard job.
Do you remember the name of the commissioner you were working with?
No?
Do you remember the name of the commissioner you were working with?
Yeah, I worked with Marvin Bentley. He was out of Divine, and I also worked with Henry Briscoe out of Divine. We was them two and me, and at one time there was a commissioner from Castroville, and that he took my place because I didn't really care to be in the committee. So he took my place, and he passed away all of a sudden. It was a heart attack. So they put me in his place and finish out the lineman. But like I said, that's when it was a whole lot easier because it was computer. And but I was involved in about maybe 3 or so changes that I was in the committee.
What did being the first Mexican-American Medina County Commissioner mean to you?
Well, it meant a lot because I was the first one, and even it's listed on the history book that we wrote out. I believe that book was made about 2-3 years after I was in office. We started talking about making a history book, and so we start that one. Then everybody got, it was advertised where everybody could put in a story and put it in that book. And I put 3. I put my grandpa's, my daddy's, and myself. Not big old stories, but enough to, show how many in the family and where was it born and all that. So, but it's a nice book. I should have brought it, but my daughter-in-law's got it, and I didn't get it from her.
You just mentioned you included your grandfather's story. Did you have a close relationship with him, or what was that like growing up?
Well, my grandparents from my wife's side, my mother's side, I got to know my grandmother because my granddad was passed away before I was born, and then on my daddy's side, I got to know both of them, and then my grandpa died first, and then she kept on for a few more years before she passed away, so I got to know him a little closer.
Did your grandfather's story specifically have any impact on you?
Not really.
And then just circling back to the election, did you notice any change among your family and friends after you were elected?
No, there might have been a few of my friends. They wasn't real close friends. They was kind of maybe jealous about me being elected, but to me, it was a job like any other job, something that I could support and my family with.
What was one struggle during your time as commissioner, and how did you overcome that?
You mean something to do with the job?
Yes.
Well, there was issues here. Like when they built a prison here in Medina County, it was in my precinct, but the city of Hondo donated everything to the state, donated the land, the utilities, everything. And all we did as commissioners, we supported the city with a resolution. And then the people got mad at me because it was in my precinct mainly. And got mad at me because we didn't want to back out of the resolution. And they thought that it was because of us that they're going to build it. And we didn't have nothing to do with it, the city was. Well, when we had the last meeting we had on that, and the state people was there, there was a lady in charge of the group that was against, and she got up and asked him, if the commissioners back out of the resolution, will that make any difference? And the state person got up and said, ma'am, we had such a good deal from the city, it don't make no difference what the commissioners do. So that kind of slacked us up. But those issues brought a lot of hard time to me. People real unhappy. They pointed at me, say, "You're never going to be elected again." And I said, "Well, that's fine, that's the case." But I counted roughly there was about 150 people maybe that was against it. So overall, the whole county was very little percentage. So that's why, not that I was crazy about the president coming, but it was just that, the percentage was too small. And the city was doing all of that. So it came in, and now all those people that was against me, they was friends again after about a couple of months. They was patting me in the back again, so I felt better then. But those are the issues that kind of bothered me when I was in office.
So, overcoming those issues, who did you turn to as a support system during your time as commissioner?
Mostly nobody. I
Really?
took it to myself. Wouldn't really help if I talked to somebody else, because they was after me myself. So it wouldn't do much good to get somebody else's advice.
I understand that your son, Henry Santos Jr., he challenged David Lynch in the Republican primary in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I'll tell you, I told him to run Democrat. And there was some friends of his that told him, why don't you run Republican and get it over with, because there was no Democratic opponent running person. So just Mr. Lynch. So they was going to get it over with, on the primary. But I told him, I said, you ought to run for Democrat like I did. See, the people here in Hondo, the majority of Hispanics are Democrats, and they don't vote Republican. They won't. And I know that for a fact. And after he lost, he told me, Dad, you was right. I should have ran Democrat. I told him, I said, I guarantee you could have won. Because a lot of people didn't like what Lynch was doing, and so they wanted to change. If I would have run, I can almost bet my paycheck that I would win. And even now, because the people like me. But he ran Republican, and the Hispanic people don't vote Republican. Especially the older generation, they don't want to change. And that was one of the reasons, I would say, that did it. He might want to run again. He's been with the state going on 20 years, and he said maybe when he retired from the state, he might run for office again. I don't know.
So you just mentioned he's been working for the state for 20 years. How did he get involved in politics? Was it early on in his life?
No, not really. He thought about running for office, being that see he could use his retirement as a commissioner, that it would count with his state retirement. It's still the same retirement system. So he thought if he would win, and he didn't have to quit his job, if he won, he would still have enough time with the highway department and the county to make a retirement out of it. But then he kept on working with the highway department. But they changed that rule after he'd been there, because when I was a state, I had to quit to run for office, and now you don't. So that makes it easier.
So he's with the Howard Department of the Department of State in Howard. Can you tell me more about what he does there?
He's a heavy equipment operator. That's what he does.
Did your son ever ask for advice when he ran in 2016? Did he ask for any political strategies that you used or anything like that?
He's kind of worse than I was, talking to people. He's quieter, and he didn't do a lot of campaigning like he was supposed to have done when he ran, and then running Republican, that's what really hurt him the most.
How do you, if you do remember the 2009 recall election?
The what?
The 2009 recall election, do you remember that at all?
The 09?
Yes, 09.
Recall on?
The Latino council here in Hondo.
No, on the city council?
I'm pretty sure it was in Medina County. I'm not too sure.
It could have been. I never got involved much with the city council, because since I live out in the country, I don't really want to really care, because it's not in my business to get involved. It's like that other commissioner that was here one time. I had a cousin, the first cousin, that was a secretary in the city, and she got in some trouble, and he went to my house and wanted me to come and speak for her at the city council meeting. And I told him, I can't do it. I said, I can't. For one thing, I said, I don't live in the city. I said, the first thing, if they ask me, Mr. Santos, where do you live? Well, I live over there between here and the Henny. I said, they'll run me out of the courtroom, because I don't have nothing to do with the city. I said, I hope you understand, if she did wrong, she did wrong. And if it was my sister, I still couldn't talk for her. I said, because I'm not in the city. Finally, I made him understand. And he's the one that ran when I retired and won, Arturo Barrientos. And after he won, he told me that was the biggest mistake he made by winning, because he was a bounceman, and he was making good money, and he thought he was going to do both. And by law, you couldn't be a bounceman and be elected official. So he had to let that business go, and that what really hurt him. He got really hurt there. And then poor guy, got sick, and I don't know if he had cancer or what, and finally died. Only one term there.
You mentioned you left your job at the Department of State as an engineer, correct? Because you were unhappy with the job. Was there any other factors that made you want to leave and start your campaign for commissioner?
No, when I quit there, it was the last day to file for commissioner, the last day. So I had to really think about it, because I wasn't going to make the money I was making with the state. And I went to work at the sales, auction barn, cattle sales. I still made a living, but I had to think about that before I quit my job, because I had to support my family and pay my bills. So I just couldn't just say, okay, I'll quit easy. And then, that's why I use that as an excuse also to run for office, because I had to quit. I knew that before, that I had to quit the state. And then my boss, I told him, I said, if I could give you a 6 months notice, I would do it. He said, well, I wish you could, but you have to quit. Well, after about 3 months later, or maybe less than that, I saw him at the post office, and my position was still open. He said, Henry, you want to go back? Same pay, same job. I said, well, let me think about it. And I didn't go back.
How did you first get that job at the Department of State?
Well, I applied for it because I wasn't getting paid much where I was working, and I applied for it, and just a few months later, they called me up, and I started there, and I worked there like, say, 10 years, from 66 to 76.
What type of work were you doing? I know you mentioned engineer, but what did that
It was
comprise of?
was an engineer surveying. That was my job.
And what does that exactly mean? I'm not really aware of.
Well, we survey a lot of these new highways that we're making now. Since I got out of there, they haven't really done much. We used to do new roads almost every year, you know, short pieces of what they call it, the highway, you know, road, highway constructions. And now they don't do no more. They're out of money, they claim. So they only got enough to maintain what is there. But we did a lot of surveying in the hill country, in Bandera, and Utopia, all that area. We did a lot of Medina Lake, and we did a lot of different highways, you know, that we had to survey, to put in the center line, and then run cross sections, and you know, put all that on the maps to be built. And now they don't do that. And if they do something, they usually contract some engineers to come and do it for them. Well, we used to do all that ourselves. We was always busy, but now they don't have much engineers left here in the offices in Hondo. That's where we were, in Hondo, and like the rest was maintenance, and then the Vinehead maintenance. But the engineers were here in Hondo, and now they don't hardly have anybody there working with the engineers.
During your time as commissioner, did you ever think about maybe going back? I know you said you were offered at the post office right now, but...
Well, not really. I'm real comfortable where I am. Working for the public, sometimes it's real nice if everything's going smooth, but then sometimes it gets aggravating when you get people, you know, against you for some reason or another, and that's when it's kind of hard. So that's why I'm real comfortable where I am now.
What did you do after your time as commissioner?
Well, I do ranching, you know, I run cattle. And you know, I don't make a lot of profit sometimes, but it's just that I was raised around animals with my parents, and I like them. Sometimes I lose money, but it's just a gamble, I guess. You know, but I still like to mess with that, with livestock.
Are you currently involved in politics now in any way? Do you still keep up with all
that? No, I had friends of mine that ran for office, but mainly it was one candidate that ran. He was from Divine. He wanted me to be his campaign manager. I said, for one thing, I'm not in your precinct. Another thing, I said, I don't want to get involved. When people ran like sheriff, so I didn't want to take part in you know, helping them out. I did it, you know, openly myself here, but I didn't want to advertise that I was pushing for another candidate because I was elected official, so I want to stay neutral. That's the way I ran mine. Some people didn't understand. Oh, you don't want to. I said, yes, but I don't want to do it openly. I don't want the people to know who I'm going to support, you know, being that I'm elected official too. And a lot of them understood that, but some of them still didn't.
Was there a significant change from when you first got elected in '81 to the end of your term in '04?
Not really. Just some issues, like I said, that went by during that time. But other than that, I feel there's a lot of times when it was real comfortable for me. I didn't have nobody griping at me or mad, and I had a lot of friends, got along real good. Sometimes I didn't get no calls like now I'm saying, no, you commissioner, you get calls all time of the night. Sometimes you go by days without a call because I was doing my job. But then if you don't, that's when you get your calls. It's kind of bad.
Was there ever a point during your time as commissioner where you questioned where you were in your life at that point? Did you say maybe I don't want to do this anymore, or were you were just comfortable throughout the entire term?
Well, once I got it, I had several years in there. I thought about trying to make a retirement out of it, and that's when I just stayed there, kept going. And then what made it easy that some of them terms I didn't have opponents, so that was an easy run. As soon as nobody signed up to run against me, they congratulated me right away because I was an automatic winner again. Made it easy.
How were the other types of commissioners you were working with? Were they mainly Anglo, and how did y'all get along?
There was all Anglos the time I was there, and the county judges, all the court. I was the only Hispanic, but we all got along pretty fair.
How did you see that change over time up until 2004? Just the demographics of the commissioners coming in and out.
Well, there was a lot of changes. See, I went like judges. I went through 4 different county judges at the time I was there, and then commissioner. There were several changes made, but most of the time, the commissioner. When I was there, we all got along pretty fair. We helped each other out if we had to. Now there was one commissioner that worked with me was the highway department, and when he got in office, see, he treated me kind of bad. We were working on a hot mix lab, and he was real ugly to me. But when he ran and got in as commissioner, I told the auditor, I said, well, he runs his prison, I run mine, and if he don't like it, that's fine. He's not going to boss me around. And we got along, fairly good, but then he ended up getting beat, and then he even passed away. But before even him, we got along real good. Even people always made remarks, Ali, y'all commissioners get along real fine, We work with each other real good. We never had arguments or something, disagreements during court. So it was nice because of that.
Regarding your opponent, incumbent John Tondra, were there any significant differences between your platforms and his when you were running for election?
Well, he wasn't too friendly, but the other one that ran, which was Charles Hood, he ran, I believe it was in '88, and we was neighbors kind of in a way, and we talked to each other. He invited me for lunch a lot of times, Of course, sometimes I said, no, I'm gonna go eat at home. I kind of felt bad to go with my opponent eat, but anyway, we got along real good. And when I beat him that time, I beat him about 4-1, and he said, "Ali, Henry, you didn't even just beat me, you stumped me." I said, "Well, that's the way it went." But we still got along, And then Tandri, he was kind of ugly to me at first when I beat him. And then later on, he started talking to me, say hello to me when I see him. But I mean, it's the people that elected me. It wasn't that I just beat him for other reasons.
Do you have any moments during your career as commissioner that stand out to you? Any maybe significant changes that you saw or enacted during your time?
Not really.
So it was smooth sailing for the most part.
What?
It was smooth sailing for the most part in your career.
Yeah.
And just going back to your family during your time as commissioner, how involved were they once you got elected? I know you said they weren't really involved with a campaign and you did it mostly yourself, but did they ever come to you to talk about your job or maybe give you any recommendations or anything like that?
You mean my family, my brothers or sisters, or you mean my immediate family?
Both your wife.
No, they never got much involved with me.
Why do you think that was?
I guess they was mostly they live out in the country too, so they didn't really care. They thought I was doing all right without their help. So I guess that made it easy for them.
After your time as commissioner, did you have any sort of opinion or perspective on on the people who filled your spot after? Was there like a trend that you saw, the commissioners after you?
No, not really.
So just in general, how do you think this interview will shape others' understanding of Medina County and just political activism here?
What you mean? What?
Yeah, just how will this interview shape others' people's understanding of Medina County? How do you think this will help?
I guess I don't know. I don't know how to answer that for sure. But I mean, some people don't even. They probably wouldn't care about what went on during my time. Most of them they care what's going on now. In the county. And the time I was in, we had a lot of people remark at us that we had a good court going on after commissioner's court. They had people come in and on us, God, y'all do a good job, y'all get along real good and all that. So that made us feel good too, And then we had some issues that they were kind of mad at us, especially when we had to raise taxes budget year. They get mad at us, but there was times when we didn't have a choice, so we had to go up a little bit, just the minimum, but still they wasn't happy.
Do you remember what years those times were?
There was different years when, very few times when we raised taxes that we had a lot of people come in the budget hearings and kind of argue about it. But we always had good reasons, why. And one time it was because like workman comp got real expensive on us, and there was an older lady that said, why don't you just drop it? Don't have that insurance. And our county attorney said, ma'am, if only one accident happens here, it'll cost us way more than what that insurance costs us a year, which was true. And then she kind of quieted down. But those sometimes people didn't understand. There was one person that they complained about taxes going up, and then the judge asked him after the meeting, he said, where do you live? Oh, I live over in Castroville, that big old house in the hill. Well, that's why he was paying taxes. Like I told the rest, I said, if you don't want to pay a high price tax, why live in an expensive home? Have a little cheaper house and pay less taxes, than have a real fancy home and can't afford the taxes.
Did you ever reach out to those people that were kind of upset at just because you had to do your job? How did you communicate with those people?
Well, I just had to tell them, it's not our choice. It's just everything is getting more expensive. The living expenses is getting higher all the time. Insurance going up, You know, for an example, when we first gave our employees insurance, health insurance, I, I was one that pushed for it as a benefit, because there was one commissioner that said, why don't we just give them, it was $48 a month for each employee. Why don't we just give them $50 in a check? I said, they won't buy the insurance, they'll fit it in something else. It's a benefit. So we started with $48, I remember that. And when I got out of office, the insurance was up to $450 per employee.
Oh, wow.
That's how much health insurance went up. So those are things that we had to raise taxes a little bit to keep them up, you know. That we didn't have a choice. The insurance kept on going up every year. But a lot of people don't understand that, because they might have insurance through their job, like we had. Mine didn't cost me nothing. And then my family cost me $150 for my wife and my kids. And then when all the kids were over the age, my wife was $100 a month. That was cheap compared to what's now. Right now, I believe a person probably have to pay $500-600 for one person. And if the family, it'd probably be $1,000. So you can't afford it anymore.
So I'm about nearing the end of my questions. Are there any questions that I didn't ask and that you would like to talk about? Anything at all?
Not really.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Santos. I really appreciate it. I really think your story is important. So.
Okay.